Beneath the glittering surface of Fairmont Crest's high society lies a darkness that even wealth can't conceal. Beyond the gates unravels a haunting psychological descent, the story of Chelsea Dupree, a woman whose perfect life fractures after a single night at a charity gala. What begins as exhaustion and paranoia soon spirals into a chilling investigation of self, where every mirror reflects a lie, and every memory feels borrowed. In a world of luxury and deceit, Chelsea is forced to confront the most terrifying question of all: what if the person she sees in the mirror was never really her? The night after the Dupree charity gala bled into stillness, the city's skyline sank beneath the fog, and Chelsea's car pulled into the driveway of her glass-walled mansion overlooking Fairmont Crest. The echo of the gala's laughter still lingered in her head, the champagne toasts, the hollow compliments, the flash of cameras that caught every practiced smile. Behind it all, exhaustion crawled through her bones like something poisonous. She closed the door, kicked off her heels, and let the silence swallow her whole. When she entered the dressing room, her reflection should have been waiting for her. Instead, she froze. The massive mirror that had hung on the far wall for years was gone. In its place stood a different one, older, with a frame carved in intricate vines and strange symbols, the silvering on the glass dulled by time. It didn't belong there. It didn't belong anywhere in her carefully curated home. At first, she blamed the staff. A redecorator's mistake. A switch made by the cleaning team. But the unease took root when she looked closer, the faint scent of earth and rust rising from the frame, the smudges that looked like fingerprints pressed from the inside. As night settled, the house dimmed into a fragile hush. The hallway lights flickered, and the silence seemed to breathe. Chelsea returned to the dressing room, her mind restless, her pulse a quiet drum. The mirror reflected the faint glow from the corridor, yet the room inside the reflection was not hers. The chandelier was missing. The curtains were torn. And in the center of that reflected space, a woman sat still as death. She had Chelsea's face. The same pale skin, the same dark curls framing her shoulders. Only the eyes were wrong, wide open, staring with glassy horror, and a dark trail of blood drying down her throat. Her breath fractured in her chest. Logic tried to crawl its way through the panic, stress, fatigue, some cruel illusion of the light. But when she looked again, the mirrored room remained. The woman's gaze seemed to pull her closer. Chelsea backed away, her heel striking the edge of the vanity table. When the security team arrived, the cameras showed nothing. The footage from the room was static, a black screen, a dead feed, as if that space didn't exist. The technicians called it a malfunction. Chelsea's hands trembled when she demanded the mirror be removed. The next morning, 2 contractors arrived. They lifted the mirror, revealing not the smooth plaster she expected but a wall that had been recently sealed, damp cement, uneven, as though someone had buried something there. When they broke through, the smell hit first, rot, decay, a sweetness that made the air thick. Inside the cavity was a human body. The corpse wore a champagne-colored gown, the same one Chelsea had worn to the gala. The hair, the jewelry, everything was hers. Flesh had begun to separate from bone, yet the face was unmistakable. The police swarmed her home, whispering questions she couldn't answer. No signs of forced entry. No missing persons reported. The DNA confirmed it, the body was Chelsea Dupree. And yet, Chelsea Dupree was still alive. Standing in her home. Breathing. Watching the world fold in on itself. From that moment, reality began to erode. The news spread through Fairmont Crest like wildfire. Some whispered it was a hoax, a twisted act of self-promotion. Others said she had a twin, hidden away. Chelsea herself could not speak. Her words felt foreign, her own name hollow. She watched her hands, the same hands that had touched that corpse's dress, and felt the slow crawling dread of not knowing who she was. The nights grew longer. Sleep abandoned her. She began to notice small dissonances. Her perfume smelled faintly different, her handwriting seemed less precise, her own reflection, the real one, not in that cursed mirror, held a subtle unfamiliarity. She moved through her home like a stranger trespassing in her own life. The people around her changed too. Her assistant, Allison, avoided eye contact. Her husband, Vincent, stayed longer at the office. When he did speak, his tone carried restraint, as though he were talking to an imposter. Chelsea began to wonder if they knew something she didn't. If perhaps they were waiting for her to realize a truth too unbearable to say aloud. Every mirror in the house became a battlefield. Her reflection seemed delayed, hesitant, like an echo trying to remember how to move. She started covering them with cloth, one by one, until her home became a labyrinth of shadows and silence. Her therapist called it dissociation, a psychological fracture caused by trauma. But Chelsea couldn't find the trauma's source. Unless it wasn't new. Unless it had always been there, waiting beneath the surface of her life, in the smiles she forced, the secrets she buried, the guilt she never dared name. In the days that followed, Chelsea began to find inconsistencies everywhere, emails sent from her account she couldn't remember writing, photos of her at events she never attended, transactions draining her accounts in small, precise amounts. Each discovery tightened the loop of paranoia. If the corpse in the wall wasn't her, then who was she? She began to revisit the gala in her mind. Every face, every glance, every laugh that lingered too long. She remembered Naomi, her business partner, whispering something sharp and cold before midnight. She remembered the toast Vincent gave, full of praise yet devoid of warmth. She remembered the photographer, a man she didn't recognize, taking one too many photos of her, even after the lights dimmed. The more she thought, the more she realized, the Chelsea who returned from that gala was not the same woman who had left. Something had been replaced, not her body, but her certainty, her place in the world, her understanding of where she ended and others began. The police investigation stalled. No fingerprints, no leads. The corpse was buried under state order, labeled unexplained. But Chelsea couldn't let go. She began digging into her own past, pulling at the seams, the sealed hospital records, the missing months in her medical file, the unexplained scars on her ribs. One night, she found a drive hidden in her husband's desk. On it, a set of clinical recordings labeled with her name. A series of psychological evaluations, dated months before the gala. The voice in the tapes was hers, speaking of memory lapses, paranoia, violent dreams. The reports described experimental therapy for identity fragmentation. In the final file, the voice said, "If something goes wrong, there must always be a replacement. The world can't tell the difference." Chelsea dropped the drive. Her hands shook as she realized, she wasn't the first. From that moment, she lived in the constant awareness that she might not be the real one. That somewhere, the original Chelsea had died long before that mirror was hung. And that everyone around her, Vincent, Naomi, Allison, knew. Perhaps they were the ones who orchestrated it, shaping her memories, building her new existence around a lie. The mirror was gone now, locked in evidence. But sometimes, when Chelsea passed a dark window, she thought she saw that other woman. The one with blood down her throat, standing just behind the glass, waiting for her to look long enough to remember which one of them was real. And every night, she wished the reflection would speak first. Because deep down, she feared it might be the one telling the truth. The days that followed became a blur of muted hours and hollow gestures. Chelsea's life moved forward as though guided by invisible hands, interviews, investigations, the silent stares of strangers pretending not to know her story. The tabloids had already chosen their truth, heiress found dead and alive. Every headline turned her into something less than human, a living paradox that no one wanted to understand. She stopped answering calls. The house became her only witness. The marble floors, once polished and bright, now seemed to echo the faintest footsteps that weren't her own. Sometimes, late at night, she would find the faint imprint of hands on the mirror's surface, though it had been locked away in evidence weeks ago. Other times, she would wake to the sound of running water, the faint scent of her perfume in rooms she hadn't entered. Yet what terrified her most wasn't the possibility of haunting. It was the realization that she no longer knew which version of herself she was supposed to be. The woman everyone saw, graceful, poised, measured, was a mask she could no longer wear. Beneath it, something restless stirred, fragments of memory, flashes of another life, images she couldn't place. A childhood home she didn't remember leaving. A hospital bed. A face, her own, pleading silently in the dark. She began to search for herself in old photographs, comparing the curve of her jaw, the distance between her eyes, as though the truth might be measurable. But each picture only deepened the uncertainty. Every smile looked rehearsed, every gaze slightly off-center, as if whoever stood before the camera was performing someone else's life. Vincent's absence no longer angered her. It became a kind of relief. His silence, once cruel, now felt like permission, an unspoken acknowledgement that the woman in his home was not the wife he'd once known. Naomi stopped visiting, Allison left without a word, and soon even the staff learned to walk quietly past her door. Fairmont Crest had moved on, pretending the Dupree scandal was just another rumor swallowed by the city's appetite for tragedy. But Chelsea could not move on. The idea of closure disgusted her. How could she bury a version of herself she might still be? The truth was both too large and too intimate, a secret carved beneath her skin. Every heartbeat seemed to echo a question she could no longer answer. If I am not her, then who decided I should exist in her place? As autumn crept across the hills, she found herself returning to the empty dressing room where it had all begun. The space was bare now, stripped of luxury and memory. She stood before the blank wall where the mirror once hung and felt the silence lean in around her. For a moment, she imagined the other woman still sitting there, on the other side, patient, unblinking, waiting. Chelsea pressed her palm against the wall, half expecting it to pulse back. Nothing. Only the faint vibration of her own heartbeat against cold stone. Yet in that stillness, she felt a strange calm. Perhaps there had never been two Chelseas. Perhaps there was only one, split across time, forced to watch herself decay and begin again. In that thought lay both horror and liberation. She realized she had spent her entire life trying to maintain an image of perfection, a reflection so polished it no longer resembled the person beneath. The corpse behind the mirror wasn't her enemy, it was her truth, the part she had buried under wealth, expectations, and the desperate need to be loved. When dawn came, the light cut across the room in thin silver lines. Dust floated through the air like quiet ghosts. Chelsea turned from the wall and walked away, her shadow stretching long across the floor. She didn't know where she was going, or if the world outside still belonged to her. But for the first time, she didn't care. The reflection would always be there, in glass, in memory, in every fragment of her fractured mind. But now, when she imagined meeting its gaze again, she no longer felt fear. Only recognition. Because some mirrors don't show us who we are. They show us who we were forced to become.